I believe the young are courageous, are bold, they have their voice. They're equally challenged on the other side with the art industry and the dynamic of the art industry, because the art industry is very new to the area in the sense of the international art industry. So there's a challenge.
When you're a child, it all starts there usually. When did it start for you?
It started when I felt the need to express. Basically, I think everything in life is art. The attempt to define art is in itself a very complex matter. And I believe for as long as we keep it as open as possible and we leave the source of expressing ourselves the key of what we want to do and what we do, so there's no start and there's no end. It's how expressive you are, finding the tool of your expression, be it designing spaces, photography, dance, cook, anything it is. And this is, when you have this kind of mindset, you are free and fluid to keep exploring new grounds and new worlds with the core essence of wanting to express.
You started out as an architect.
Yes.
Was it the traditional mom and dad, like you have to be either a doctor or an architect, or was it like something that you wanted to do?
This is going to kind of take you by surprise, actually. I was truly in love with chemistry.
Okay.
All right. And I think it all goes back to my chemistry teacher, who made chemistry extremely fun, that it was some sort of design in itself. And my whole aspiration was to design laugh gas, because laugh and happy gas is so much fun.
And dangerous. It's a dangerous combination.
So yeah, I was in it for designing laugh gas.
Okay. How did that shift?
Actually, I approached and applied for chemical engineering. And I visited the engineering building, and this is where architecture exists. And I walked down the corridor of the architectural building, and when I saw the projects hanging on the wall and how beautiful and functional and expressive and diverse, and this is when I knew that that's exactly what I want to do. Prior to that, I have actually been always involved in helping my parents design things. Okay. So when we're doing our home, when we're moving out, I'm always involved in the process, in the detail of the process, in designing everything around the house, but specifically my room. Okay. I had a huge issue with my mother specifically for the entrance, where moving from one house to the other, where it should be in the center or off center. And I recall such details. They're coming back to me. Yeah, and designing my room itself was such a huge pleasure. I remember it was burgundy, deep burgundy, and the painters walking through in and out were like, what kind of room is that, So I was really involved buying the vintage relaxed chair, the leather chair, selecting my Japanese bed.
What age was this?
This was, I think, 18, 19, 18, 17, in this range. But before that, I was always involved. Okay. So it's the way you express. I had no intention back then. Okay. It's just, you either love things, you love life, you want to express, you have something to say. This is when you know you're pursuing something. Not necessarily art, not necessarily architecture. No, it's the passion for things.
Well, sitting here right now, I noticed something very unique, is that you have an eye for detail, and a very specific one. And you love anything visual. From looking behind me right now, or just checking it out before we even sat down, there's binoculars up there. There's, I think, a very close kind of form of early projector that you can look into slides. Yeah. And there's some different glasses here besides the one.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I can see that you've always been looking at something visual and something that's very specific.
Yeah, it's mostly things that tell a story. Okay. It's mostly things, even in contemporary pieces. If the contemporary piece has a story, the artist has a story. Around you are a lot of contemporary art pieces. Mostly, I would say 90% or even more, are painters that I know personally. That there's a story, there's a shared narrative between us. There's something, I'm looking at my friends in this room. So it's either people I know or people I don't. But everything behind you, like you were previously highlighting, definitely holds a story, a memory, an untold story, a story left to your imagination. So it's that. It's basically the binoculars probably were owned by someone who had this hobby of doing this. The slides come from a house that inherits gave out or sold the products. The rest are from Amgad Naguib, the vintage dealer in downtown, where I go and sit with him and chat and try to find the story behind it. So it's the story. It's basically the emotion that things carry. I believe things that pass down, I think we as humans pass down things.
From one generation to another.
And it's also done in multiple manners and ways, through documentation, through documentaries, through photography, through art, through cinema. I believe we humans, in a way, have this dire need to document, starting from ancient Egypt. It's our trace, it's what you leave behind. And I believe that this, when left behind, will say something about me. In a way.
This is actually something that I wanted to ask you. You shifted from, no, you didn't shift fully, but you have several hats. You wear
Exactly.
several hats. One of which that a lot of people have been talking about, like photography specifically. Why did you shift? Is it the same reason as stories when it comes to photos as well?
No, I just follow how I feel. I was bored. I think I have hit the glass ceiling. And this, I think, is extremely important to know when you hit the glass ceiling, when you're on repeat, when you're on autopilot. Once you start, comfort zone becomes, khalas, it's done, you achieved this. You either start capitalizing on what you achieved and start paying homage to yourself, and this is when you fall in the trap, basically. Because if you are this curious, passionate human being, you always pursue different endeavors and tap on new land, and you want to explore. You want to express differently, you want to learn, you want to try new things.
And did your previous experience with architecture and design, did you use that in your photography?
Definitely. I mean, everything pours back in one another. Again, but back to your first question. Unfortunately, 10 years ago, the architectural and interior design domains weren't as inspiring as they are today.
Okay.
When you talk architecture anywhere in the world, it's public space. It's spaces that people use. It is iconic spaces or landmarks, hospitals, schools, airports, stations. It's all about the public space. Here in Egypt, here in Cairo, it was very limiting. You're talking about developments, you're talking about modular homes that are on repeat. You're talking about malls that just look the same. Now, design has become an edge. So now it's back to being inspiring again. Now you can actually fulfill certain needs of expression. However, back then, you're basically on repeat mode. You're designing blocks that just have slight differences.
Okay.
And you're designing for the few. You're not designing for the mass. You're not designing for people, for humans. This brings us to your following question.
Yeah.
You can always go back and forth. You can always tap on new things when the core essence of what you do is humanity. Because I believe expression and design and art and everything is somehow tied with this transparent thread that puts it all in tact and in shape. Humanity. Okay. You do that. You do art to express human. You collect art to express. It's all about that. If, like Philip Stark once said, it's all about pouring back to the human tribe. All right. If this is your core message or mission, then everything ties in together. You take from here, you go back here, and when you leave for a while, this temporary displacement gives you good vision. Everything. Yeah, and it gives you good vision to see it macro, to see it differently, versus being fully indulged and immersed.
When because this is something that everybody does when they're doing any kind of photography, is either, like, for example, layman people. I'm not talking about photographers. Normal iPhone users, for example, or anything like that.
iPhone user.
I mean, like, people usually tend to take photos either to preserve a memory or take a beautiful photo of something that they see beautiful, gorgeous, whatever. What is it that you look for when you take your own photo? Is it the same story angle, or is it something else?
It changes. It keeps on changing. But again, if you're true to yourself, it remains, there's this line that ties everything together again, because it's a reflection of who you are. Same way as you carry yourself, the same way as you dress. I mean, we all change the way we dress, but it's all you. Okay. Correct? Along age and a long time, you change. But there's this character thread that keeps everything tied. So in photography, when I first started at university, this is when I started photography, I was infatuated with architectural photography. And during field trips to Old Cairo, to where we did our urban studies in Ain Sira, where we visited homes, we did our surveys and analysis and all that, I was very curious and keen and intrigued by different things in homes. I'm always this curious intruder that trespasses, you know, always wanting to uncover certain things. So I did that during university. It was very fulfilling. And then I finished the stage. And then I took my distance. I pursued my career as an architect. And then when I went back to photography, it was street photography. Okay. I was already saturated and fulfilled with the first surface. So I peeled this off. And you go to the following surface. The following surface there was human behavior, was how people interact. This was, I mean, if I wasn't an architect designer, I'd be an anthropologist, a sociologist. It's something I truly admire, observing human behavior. I think this also helps in all hats that I wear. In architecture or design, you really need to understand your clients. You need to have the conversation. You need to create this connection and bond. You need to understand them. You need to leave yourself outside and start listening. And you embody and you take in and you understand and you perceive and then you reflect, because we're end of the day we're giving a service. You're building something that people will use. If you want to build your own, build your own. So when you put this in perspective, human behavior was really my approach, was the communication, was the conversation in the street. It was 50% photography, 50% conversation. Okay. So maybe I don't take a good shot, but I had a beautiful, fulfilling, inspiring conversation.
And from that conversation, you get a story.
Exactly. And then you come back again with this appetite to know more. So I'd never listen to music, for instance, when I'm shooting. I want to listen to everything that's happening around me. I want to smell, I want to see, I want to feel, I want to converse.
Get the full experience.
It's the full experience. So, and then when you immerse yourself in that, you start dissecting and deconstructing the elements and breaking them down to the smallest element. And when you do that, you convey the biggest picture with the smallest element. It becomes a universal metaphor that anywhere in the world, everywhere, anyone would understand what you're trying to say or would receive the message in a universal manner. So you go to the core emotion of what you want to. If you can go directly to the core emotion without any unnecessary layers, it becomes well read, well felt, well understood,
and fully detailed, of course. So essentially, if I'm just assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, if I would describe a Karim El Hayawan's photo or work, it would be humanity, history, details, and story. Mostly,
but there's a bit of humor. Dark humor. Okay. There's a bit of critique. It's all underlayered. Okay. I mean, my photography doesn't carry the same level of happiness and joy and simplicity as they do. There's so many underlayers of critique, of satire. Okay. There's always this little pinch, but I always believe that a colorful approach always takes you in, and then your message.
Has there been an elusive shot that you've been trying to get and you haven't been able to so far?
No, there's plenty of elusive shots. I believe that Cairo in itself is surreal altogether. It's surreal to an extent that it became real. It grew on us. So there's always these surreal moments that just don't add up, that don't make sense. I think nowadays a lot of beautiful Instagram accounts have surfaced, like I don't feel safe in Egypt and all these are just fantastic. Because they are documentation toilets of Egypt. I mean, people are really dissecting the constituents of our community and society and circle and city into its smallest elements. That's the most beautiful way of describing or portraying your city, because when you break it down to the smallest and then add them up. So I'm saying there's the laundry photo, which is extremely, I mean, I wouldn't want to say popular, but I mean, it's a very surreal shot. There's the chair hanging somewhere is a very surreal shot. So they're all like, you look at them and you say, really? Did this exist? Yeah. Did he stage that? You know, they're not documentary. They're more surreal. And unlike any other city in the world or a few cities in the world, you get these situations, you get these incidents. Everything mostly is so proper, so in place, so predictable, so expected.
Yeah,
you know?
I think from what I'm getting is life is stranger than fiction. So essentially you find that in front of you.
If we don't document that, if
you
don't
believe it.
Go past the bridge and find all these peeled buildings with drawings and people's bedrooms just unveiled, right? This is surreal. I mean, the list can go on and on and on. So I believe it's a duty to document such real surrealism.
Okay. You've traveled to several countries. This is specifically regarding Cairo, but I am going to go to it with another angle. You've been to several countries, I'm sure. Paris, I think, as well.
Yeah. You mean exhibiting or visiting? Or
visiting or exhibiting, either. Has any of them, because I think from what I'm getting from your work, Cairo is your muse.
100%.
Has that changed in any way?
No, I mean, at first, I tried to deal with other or observe and perceive other cities the same way. And then I realized I just failed drastically. Because it's almost impossible to absorb and feel a city in a week or two or a month. You need to live there, you need to stay there, you need to feel, eat, converse, interact. You need all that. So after I think 5 years since I started, I realized whenever I travel, I'm a tourist. It's a beautiful sabbatical. I just walk around in shorts and a camera and take a photo of the Taj Mahal, like the tens of millions, hundreds of millions of photos, because I owe that to myself. Why do I need to claim depth when it's impossible? You just enjoy it.
Because you never lived there.
Yeah, it's fine to be a tourist. You'd be claiming depth where you're actually just on the surface. And it shows, and it's absurd. So I think when you're on that level, you just need to embrace and acknowledge and celebrate that level. It's perfectly fine. It's one of the level. Maybe if I go again to the same city, I'll see it differently. Then I'll portray something differently. Definitely, some cities are very inspiring and intriguing. I try to take interesting shots. I try to create moments that I find interesting that I want to document for myself. But again, it depends on how you feel towards that city and why you're there. And usually I don't have much time. Okay, unfortunately.
Well, I hope that you have much more time there as well. With the accessibility of a lot of iPhones and essentially cameras getting better and better with our daily carries, do you think that photography has now become more accessible to people, normal people that aren't focused?
Everything's accessible. It's not only photography. You can digital paint. My daughters both digital paint on Procreate, and it's there, and you just take a photograph or a painting, and you trace and you paint and you add filters and you add layers and you add all that. So again, everything's accessible, which I think has been building up in the past 10 to 15 years. It's not new. Before, I believe access to information was exclusive, and this is what gave edge. If you have, which is, I believe, very limiting, because it was the few privileged that can have this kind of access to information. Then their interpretation of that was truly biased and extremely exclusive. However, now things have changed. Everything's accessible. It's how you perceive and how you interpret and how you digest and then express and apply. So everything's accessible. It's not only photography. Everyone's a filmmaker. Correct?
True.
Everyone's a painter. Everyone's an installation artist. Correct? Everyone's a cook.
Yeah, true.
Correct? So everyone's everything, which is perfect. 10 years ago, you used to fight to be a polymath or a multidisciplinary. Now it's the trend. Now anyone who wants to get away with doing everything or doing nothing at all is a multidisciplinary human being, which is fantastic. I believe in these organic calibrations. When everyone's doing that and then life calibrates, it filters itself. I hate it when people start claiming that you are this and you aren't, or
putting label on something.
Putting label, limiting people. I mean, it's so elitist. You can do anything you want, the way you want, even if it's simple, even if it's basic, if it satisfies you, if it gives you pleasure, if it's fulfilling. What else do you need? Again, everything's accessible. Now it's all about
going out there and
doing it and building yourself, because I believe this is the core pursuit that everyone should work on, building yourself. It's the books you read, the films you watch, the music you listen to, the people you engage with. These are all the elements that build you up. And then you have something to express. Expressing it through photography, which has become accessible, is equally expressing it through filmmaking, which is equally accessible, through painting, which is equally accessible. So now it's back to who you are and what you're building and the seed you're planting. And that's fantastic. Before, it was extremely exclusive.
Well, moving forward from this, I want to look at the artwork from your perspective, but from an external point of view when it comes to the whole MENA region? You've traveled to several countries in the MENA region. How have you seen that shift in the past, for example, 5 to 10 years?
It's definitely progressive.
Okay.
I believe the young are courageous, are bold, they have their voice. They're equally challenged on the other side with the art industry and the dynamic of the art industry, because both, I mean, the art industry is very new to the area in the sense of the international art industry. So there's a challenge, there's a crack, there's like a little unspoken, you know, change. And
a small revolution.
Yeah. And so it's this art industry with all its dynamic, all its politics and game changers and players versus young artists that are extremely vocal, expressive, free and liberated, are not tied at all to any previous rules or preconceptions of. I mean, a dear artist that I wanted to collaborate with on a piece that was highlighting a very important, iconic master artist. I asked him to collaborate with me on it, on a video piece, and he said, wait, let me go to the museum and see if I like him or not. Okay. For our generation, this didn't even exist. It's a preconception that you like the masters. You're growing up learning from the masters. I mean, each generation has its pros and cons. So he went to the museum, he came back, he said, I'm sorry, I don't like this artist.
Okay, I got it.
You know what? There's a lot of freedom. There's a lot of revolt against all
bluntness as well. Right? Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of bluntness, and yeah, exactly.
Fast questions. Egypt for me is
my inspiration.
Art for me is
my expression and vent, and art is art.
If I wasn't a designer, I would be
an anthropologist.
Thank you very much. That's pretty much it. I really had a lovely time. And do you have any questions from your?
No. How do you perceive this conversation?
I loved the conversation. I loved how passionate you are regarding your art and art in general. To be honest, love your love for detail. I'm kind of a collector, but I'm kind of more of a geek than an antique. And because I love the design and what you're looking for, I love the record and everything. What do you listen to, by the way? Everything from Miles Davis to Jamiroquai.
Oh,
a jazz fan. Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, again,
I have 2 more questions.
Sure.
You're not going to end this easy.
Yeah, sure. I've been asking all the questions. Shoot away.
So yeah, what did you come here expecting, and how did this change through this conversation?
I think I've met the expectations what I was looking for. I've because we've met before, even just briefly. I thought, well, I'm gonna meet a cool guy. Who is very funny and he's passionate about art, but I didn't know how deep that passion went through. It didn't change. No, it did not change. So it was fine.
How far accurate was your research, online or whatever? You've read my bio, obviously.
I've looked everywhere.
News is
I looked everywhere. I had a quote. I can't show it over the camera. I have a quote actually that has.
Sorry to be such.
Had so much detail. How accurate? You're way bigger than your bio, and I hope I'd see more.
That's
from
really,
you
really nice of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for checking us out, and of course, check out more on our website, scoopempire.com. Bye.